Welcome back to the show. You're watching NHL Now. Our top news story today is a big one out of Toronto. General Manager Kyle Dubas is out. That announcement coming from the Toronto Maple Leafs earlier today. Brendan Shanahan addressed the media just a few hours ago, and talked about the last week since the Toronto Maple Leafs were eliminated from the postseason, how things shifted in the negotiations between himself and Kyle Dubas on an extension. Here's a look at the last 5 seasons with Kyle Dubas at the helm as the general manager of the team. With more on this story out of Toronto, we bring in NHL Network insider Elliotte Friedman. Elliotte, I'll just start with what we heard from Brendan Shanahan today and how this sort of happened, where things broke down. What did you make of what he had to say to the media today?
No, Jackie, I thought it was one of the most incredible media conferences I've ever seen, because it's very rare that you hear the details of a negotiation are played out like that. Now, I want to stress we haven't heard Kyle Dubas speak yet, so we've only heard one side of the story. But how many times, Jackie and EJ and Bruce, when you do this business, do you hear, I'm not going to negotiate a contract through the media? You hear it all the time. And here we heard, basically, from the Maple Leafs point of view, everything that happened over the last year and especially over the last 4 or 5 days. That's really rare. I was sitting there just as a reporter saying, it's very rare you get this much detail. So, look, I think that 4 or 5 days ago, I thought for sure that Kyle Dubas was coming back as general manager of the Maple Leafs. I believe the organization, after last summer deciding not to do it, was now prepared to do it. As Shanahan talked about in his remarks today, they were happy with the job he did. And then everything changed with Kyle Dubas's media conference on Monday. And, one of the things that came to light today that Shanahan said was a new contract offer from, or a contract negotiation from his agent on Thursday that obviously Shanahan didn't like. It's pretty clear in the last 96 hours, Brendan Shanahan changed his mind on Kyle Dubas, and so did the organization. And that's why we are when we are. But I have to say, this is one of the most remarkable media conferences I've seen in recent memory.
Elliotte, I got to tell you, I've been seeing a few of them myself over the years, and I was kind of mesmerized for first 11. I guess Brendan, I think, talked for 11 minutes off the top, and I think he ended up being about 25 minutes in total there, maybe a little longer. But it was fascinating. It was very detailed. The thing I took out of it, Elliotte, and I'll ask you, I mean, he said this did not. He was asked, and he said he said it didn't break down over money, but he did point out that he went out of his way to say, yeah, Thursday I got a call. After basically the timeline, I felt like they were in agreement on a deal. It was a matter of whether he wanted to do it. I got to think that you come back with another offer from the agent on Thursday, all of a sudden that probably is the thing that maybe pushes you over the edge.
Yeah, I think there's certainly some degree of that. Like, one of the things is, like, I work for the company that owns 37.5% of MLSE, and I kind of understand the way they negotiate. And I could see that, like, one of the things you learn in any kind of negotiation class or strategy was if you go through a conversation and the terms change at the end, people aren't going to be happy. So again, like, the one thing I want to stress is we haven't heard Dubas's side of this, but whenever that happens, you always take a look at that can be a real problem. One side can take real offense to that. But, the other thing I take a look at it, and what's interesting, too, about this media conference, if you listen to Shanahan's language, like on Monday when Dubas had his media, talked about the stress it had on his family, that Shanahan had indicated he didn't think it was a good idea Dubas talked that day, and Dubas did anyway because the team did, so he wanted to speak too. Like, I think that one of the things you learn in sports is the idea of all in. Like, the players are all in, the management's all in, the ownership's all in. Like, you look at the 4 teams left in the Stanley Cup playoffs, there's the whole notion of everybody's all in. And, like, you can talk about, okay, everybody needs time and things like that. I think this is a lesson that at the highest levels of performance, there's this thing about all in. And I don't know if it's fair or not. I'm sure Dubas might not think that's fair, but the more I think about this media conference today, I think about that as how Brendan Shanahan admitted when he saw that on Monday that maybe his feelings started to change. And like, Bruce, you're a coach. Everybody's got to be all in to win, and athletes and coaches think like that all the time. It's something that hasn't left my mind since Shanahan said it.
I got a quick follow, Elliot, on the Dubas part of this, looking for, with a new contract thing. It tells me a little bit about his camp that they feel like they have options if they want to pursue them down the road, which would make sense because he's a young guy, correct?
Yes, but to be honest, I think Dubas wanted to be the GM in Toronto. I do. I believe that was his first choice, and it would still be his first choice even today. The one thing I do think could change is when he spoke Monday, he said it was Toronto or no one else. After this media conference today, I could see him changing his mind and saying, if I want to go somewhere, I'm going to go somewhere right away.
Absolutely. Hey, Elliot, you know the city of Toronto, the market of Toronto as well as anybody, especially the Maple Leafs. You've been covering them for so long. Do you think they will really take their time and get a drawn-out affair where the questions are asked every day? Or is this something that the Leafs will just say, we think we know who we want, let's go get them, much like they did with maybe Babcock or something? When they want something, they go after it. Or do you think it's going to be a long time frame before they hire somebody?
I don't think, Bruce, they can afford a long time. There's some big decisions they've got to make here. I think they're gonna target people first and say this is who the ideal person that we want to get or type of person we want to get, and then go from there. One of the names that's jumped off everybody's a list right away because he's available is Brad Treliving from Calgary. I have no doubt they're going to try to speak to him. I think he's someone they're going to try to talk to. This is my personal opinion. I want to stress that because I don't even know if he's available. But Doug Armstrong is an Ontario guy. I think he's someone that, the Maple Leafs have kind of internally talked about, if we ever made a change, would he be available? I don't even know if he's available, but that's a name that I've kind of wondered about. I'm sure there's plenty of more. People are going to come out of the woodwork here because this is the Toronto Maple Leafs job and it's a great job. But, Bruce, Austin Matthews, they gotta sign him to an extension, and if they don't do it by July 1st, he has his no trade kick in, and I think after today, it's going to be much tougher to get him to agree to sign by July 1st. And also the coach, they got to make a decision on Sheldon Keefe, and I think now it's going to be up to the next general manager.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow, Elliot, was about Austin Matthews and how this decision to part ways with Kyle Dubas and find a new GM impacts that negotiation. I have to imagine it makes it tougher, as you just outlined, because by all accounts he has a great relationship with Kyle Dubas, and I feel like that was a positive thing for the Toronto Maple Leafs in terms of signing Austin Matthews to an extension. But Sheldon Keefe, remains the head coach of this team. Are you surprised by that at all, that it wasn't kind of a full sweep here from Brendan Shanahan and the Maple Leafs?
No, because I really believe, Jackie, that the Maple Leafs plan with Keefe was always to sit down, take a deep breath, and think, are there really better options out there? And so I think that was always the case. Now that they're going to be looking for a new GM, I think they're going to leave it up to the manager. Although I will say this, I think this. I know Keefe has another year, so it's not like he's a free agent. But I do think that you reach a point where you've got to be honest with your staff. And so if people need to get new jobs, they're able to go out there and look for new jobs. So, I hope that, that's part of this process too.
Well, there's certainly no shortage of questions off of this news out of Toronto that Kyle Dubas is no longer the general manager. So the search is on, and it sounds like they're going to have to find their new GM pretty quickly if they want to start these negotiations with one Austin Matthews. Elliot, thank you for the time. We appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thanks very much. Have a great long weekend. And Jackie, enjoy Carolina.